Is this the same Boston Bruins team you remember? I mean, we all hate the Bruins. That goes without saying. But it kind of hurt to watch this game tonight. The Habs, of course, coming away with a 4-1 win over the last placed Boston Bruins. I don't remember ever saying that before in my life. Time to drop the puck on Montreal Hockey Talk. Hey, everybody. Costa here with another edition of Montreal Hockey Talk. And as I get started, I really don't remember in my lifetime, and I'm an old man. I'm 53 years old. And you could say I'm old, you could say I'm not. I think I am. I don't remember a Boston Bruins team being this bad. I really don't. And you know what? All that said, this rivalry is just not the same as it used to be. It actually hurt me to watch this. You know, you're talking about a guy here that grew up with Don Cherry, and, you know, I watched a little bit of Bobby Orr, of course, with the Bruins, and I watched, you know, Rick Middleton, Wayne Cashman, Don Marcotte. The list goes on and on. Brad Park, you know, Ray Bork, Zdeno Chara, the whole 9 yards. Keep naming players. I've watched them all. And the Bruins have always been a competitive team throughout, all the way through till now. All of a sudden, it looks like somebody pulled the carpet out from the Bruins. And it showed tonight. I mean, the Montreal Canadiens, full credit for dominating a team that they should have dominated, but it hurts to watch the Bruins play that way. And I feel for guys like my friend Jimmy Murphy down in Boston, who I'm going to talk about a little bit later on in the show. But, you know, we got to give credit where credit is due tonight. And it starts and goes with Sam Montembeault. Despite the fact that the Bruins only got 19 shots on goal, they did get a few quality scoring opportunities. They got one past them late in the game. But, you know, he did look a little different in the net. He was out beyond the top of the crease. He was challenging shooters, cutting off the angle, and looking better in goal, a lot more comfortable. And that came early on. An early breakaway, came out, blocker save, no harm, no foul. And Sam Montembeault looked like a goaltender. And I've criticized him quite a bit, not because of who he is or what he is, but the way he's been coached. And it looks like there's been a little bit of an adjustment there. So I'm going to say, I'll give Eric Raymond a little bit of a pass here, but good job by Sam Montembeault tonight. I was really happy with his performance, despite the fact that in the second period, when the Bruins had 0 shots for the first 12 minutes, I was worried the next shot was going to go in. Didn't happen, thankfully, but at the end of the day, you know, I want to get those thoughts out of my head and focus more on the positive. And the positive comes out with the captain, Nick Suzuki. And now, a goal and 2 assists tonight to add to his point total. And here it is, folks. Lock, stock, and barrel. Right now, as it stands, at 81 points, Nick Suzuki is tied with Sidney Crosby for 6th in the NHL in centers, scoring for centers. All right? So this argument about whether or not Nick Suzuki is a number 1 center in the National Hockey League, it's got to stop. Right here, right now. Okay? I don't care that he's not 6'2". The fact of the matter is he meets all the other criteria. He's good at both ends of the ice. He can put the puck in when he needs to. He's a great puck distributor, as noticed tonight when he fed Cole Caulfield for his goal. What more do you want from a centerman? He kills penalties. He's on the power play. He does it all. Not only that, but as a captain, he also speaks quite eloquently and he leads by example. What more does anybody want in a hockey player? I don't think there's much. And this is a guy who got snubbed for Team Canada at the Four Nations Cup. Granted, Canada had all kinds of firepower, but still, you want to see your players there. And I thought Nick Suzuki deserved to be there, quite honestly. I also thought Cole Caulfield deserved to play for Team USA, and he did. So it is what it is. But at the end of the day, did he? Yeah, he did. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. Right? Right now, Nick Suzuki is full marks for everything, right? You look at his development from 2021 when he joined the Habs after they acquired him through this season, and I still don't think he's reached his peak yet. He's still got room to grow, as do Cole Caulfield, as does Juraj Slafkovsky. This team's only going to get better. And with everything coming up the pipeline, oh my God, what this team's going to look like. But tonight, you got another example of a Nick Suzuki who is standing by his word. The other night, after the win against the Florida Panthers, where he scored the last 2 goals of the game to bring that win in overtime, he said straight up that He had a taste of playoff hockey, but he didn't have the fans. This time around, he wants playoff hockey with the fans, and he's delivering. He's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. And what more can you ask from a captain, right? You lead by example. Now, another guy you got to give huge props to right now after the Four Nations Cup is Christian Dvorak. Here's a guy who didn't know what was going to happen to him. Am I going to get traded? Am I not going to get traded? And really, at the trade deadline, he had no value. So I don't think anybody thought he was going to go anywhere. And then lo and behold, all of a sudden in his last 10 games, he's got 10 points, 5 goals, 5 assists, and a big goal tonight to open the scoring. Hello? Where was this guy earlier in the season? Who knows? Maybe, he didn't really feel comfortable with his line mates, because right now he looks extremely comfortable. And so here he is. The Christian Dvorak that I think Marc Bergevin thought he was going to get has made his appearance, and at the best possible time. So thumbs up to him. And then, of course, Brendan Gallagher getting another goal tonight on a horrible giveaway by Middlestad. And Gallagher's got 19 goals on the season. I mean, here's a guy who just lost his mom. And, everybody thought his career was done. But is it? I don't think so. If he can continue to score 20 goals a season, he's right there now. He may not be worth the $6.5 million that Marc Bergevin signed him for, but I think he's still worth a hell of a lot of value to the Montreal Canadiens moving forward. We'll see how long that lasts, but hopefully he continues to on this same path and he stays healthy, because those couple of hand injuries really, really could have cost him his career, but he's come back in spades from those injuries. Now, speaking of injuries, there's a couple of guys on the ice that are playing hurt, and we all know it. Yoel Armia is playing with a limp wrist, and David Savard is skating like he's got his legs encased in cement. I mean, he can't move. Case in point, when he took his penalty tonight. I mean, he literally had to reach in because the player blew right by him, and he couldn't pivot. And now I understand that the Montreal Canadiens want to have their best players on the ice. And on paper, we know very well that Savard can play defense, and we know that Armia brings a lot of value to the table. But when they're injured like this, what value can they really bring? You look at Armia, and one of his strengths is being able to dig pucks off the boards and stick handle in a phone booth. Well, when your wrist hurts, you can't really stick handle, can you? And so he's going through the motions. There was even at one point tonight where he was getting pushed around, and you can tell he wants to push back, but he knows he can't. And so do you really want to continue playing a guy like that? And then you look at David Savard. I mean, Savard has not looked good in weeks. I mean, he's literally the epitome of Hal Gill, unable to move, can't skate, tries to flip the puck out at all times just to relieve pressure because he can't really drive through a clearing attempt or a pass. And so why are you keeping guys in the lineup? You've got kids in Laval that can come up. You can call up a Logan Mailloux. You can call up, they did call up Oliver Kapanen, but you've still got Joshua Roy here. So you've got options. You've still got Arbor Jacki, who's been benched the last few games because of his lack of good play, or poor play, I should say. Just plain out poor play. I can't speak English tonight for some reason. But there it is. The Canadiens have those luxuries right now. They have options. You don't have to play Logan Mailloux 25 minutes a night. You don't do that with David Savard. If you play him 12 to 15 minutes, you're okay, especially on a bottom pairing. But Logan Mailloux is better than that. I think he could give you more minutes than that. So why not bring him up to replace Savard for a game or two, just to give your veteran defenseman a break? Let him heal up a little bit. Who knows what the injury is? I know that earlier in the season, we saw him miss a couple of games and skate around the Complex Sportif CN in a tracksuit, and he didn't look like he was comfortable. And then they brought him back into the lineup, and he still didn't look comfortable. So I'm trying to understand the reasoning behind why. Now, whether it was because they wanted to showcase him prior to the trade deadline, that's one thing. But now that the trade deadline's come and gone, there's no real reason to force him to continue to play, despite the fact that he's really not bringing anything to the table. When he's healthy, God knows David Savard is a very serviceable defenseman, and a defenseman that teams like Toronto and some others were interested in before the deadline. But seeing as how he couldn't move, you knew that nobody was going to take a chance on him because nobody knew the extent of the injury. So what do? Rest him. And I know you're in a playoff race. I know you're trying to get that last wild card spot. I get it. But if they can't do their jobs effectively, what's the point of keeping them in the lineup? I ask you, put it in the comments. Let me see what you have to say, really, because I don't understand. Personally, since I am director of hockey operations for not one but two junior teams now, I can tell you, when a player's injured, you're not seeing the ice, buddy. We had a player who literally hurt his thumb on his blocker hand, right? Could still hold his stick, could still play, but we wouldn't play him. Why? Because of the fear that one shot would make him drop his stick. And a goalie without a stick, you know how vulnerable he is. So we didn't play him. We waited till his thumb got better. You know, what more is there to that? I don't understand how you can put an injured player in that position. It doesn't reflect well on you, and it certainly doesn't reflect well on the player. Speaking of call-ups, I didn't mention him before, but got to mention my friend Jimmy Murphy, who's suffering through this Bruins season like a champ. And, you know, from the Sick Podcast, the Eye Test with Pierre Maguire, he came up with a big one along with Marco D'Amico. And that is that Jacob Fowler signed to an ATO and an entry-level contract for 2025-26. That means that he's going to forego his remaining season at Boston College, and he is about to join the Laval Rocket. And now, what does that mean? Really, it kind of falls in the wheelhouse of the Canadiens right now, because you want to give Fowler a little bit of experience. He's not going to play very much. Now it's a playoff, and I think that Kane Primo, given his performance in Laval, deserves to continue to play. But, you know, you've got Kane Primo, you've got Connor Hughes, you've got Jakub Dobeš, you've got Sam Montembeault. I mean, there is depth at the goaltending position right now. And you know that Fowler is probably going to start superseding all these guys because of his pedigree. But that's really pushing it. He's got at least a couple of years before he's going to be that number one goaltender that we think he might be in Montreal. But that being said, the fact that he's going to forego that last season at Boston College, it is BC, right? Or Boston University. I can never remember. I think it's Boston College. But anyway, I digress. Seeing that he's going to forego his last season in college so that he can play for the Laval Rocket next year, what does that mean? I mean, to me, it means that one of our goalies is either going to have to take it in the chin and go down to play with Trois-Rivières, the Canadiens ECHL franchise, or somebody's getting moved. And somebody is most likely going to be Caden Primo, unfortunately. I mean, God knows that there are teams out there that are looking for goaltenders. I mean, you've got Philadelphia is looking for goaltending. Whether or not they decide to go with Primo, given that his dad, Keith, was with the organization, who knows? I mean, but there are teams out there that are looking for goaltenders. Good goaltenders are at a premium. I honestly think that Caden Primo has a lot to give any team, so long as he gets away, like I said, from Eric Raymond. Much like Jake Allen, I think Caden Primo in another environment is going to look really good. We saw it happen with Charlie Lindgren, right? And, you know, you put a goaltender in front of a more reliable defense. Like you could say right now at the beginning of this season, the Montreal Canadiens defense was not very reliable, and they depended a lot on their goaltenders to make saves. They didn't get them early on, and so that reflected in the Canadiens' record and in the fact that they sent Primo down and they eventually brought up Dobeš because you need a capable backup. But Primo went down, and all of a sudden he looked like a different goaltender. I forget what his record is, but it's something stupid like 16-2-1 or something like that with the Laval Rocket at this point, going into the playoffs. So if he can play at the AHL level like that, with I think his save percentage is upwards of .928, and given the last 23 games he played last year, where he had the best stats of any goalie on the Canadian staff, I mean, I think really that Caden Primo can bring some value to another team. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and get a number one pick for Primo. That's not going to happen. But I think you could get a pretty good second rounder for him. And with the track record that this management group has, they could probably use that second round pick to flip it for something else. So he can bring you some value. But in the meantime, you're going to have Jacob Fowler playing meaningful games with the Laval Rocket. And honestly, I think that's what everybody wants to see. So I'm anxious for the beginning of next season with the Laval Rocket. I'm anxious to see what Fowler's going to bring to the table. Because he didn't really finish off his season this year in the NCAA very strong, but we all know that he was well overplayed, and we also know that he's got a lot to bring to the table. And getting away from your studies and being able to really focus on hockey and only hockey, that kind of goes a long way. So it's great that he's signed. It's great that he's under contract. And let's see what happens. But I'm excited, and you should be excited too, because think about it. You're going to have Fowler down in the AHL. Demidov most likely will start with the Canadiens next year. I mean, there's a lot of guys. You've got Reinbacher. You've got Mailloux. There's all kinds of good things happening with this team. And the fact that they're on the cusp of getting into the playoffs, they're right there. I mean, the destiny's in their own hands, right, this season? I mean, it's the most positive that we've been for the Montreal Canadiens in a long, long time. So let's enjoy it. And finally, this coming Saturday, the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be coming to Montreal to play the Canadiens. And now we know what happened the last time. We went out to Philly. We wanted to beat Philly, and we ended up shitting the bed. Why? Because that same day, Philadelphia decided to fire John Tortorella, and the players had something to prove. Well, it's been a week. And you know that high has started to fade, like it always does. And no coach is going to be able to turn this team around like that in a heartbeat, because the Flyers are just bad. So, much like the Bruins, and the Philly Flyers are going to have to look at rebuilding a little bit. They do have Michkov, and they're already starting that rebuild to a certain extent. Sean Couturier getting a little long in the tooth. So there are some components there that they could use moving forward, but you know that the Flyers have a lot of work to do, much like the Bruins, like I said. So, are they going to rebuild? Are they just going to retool? We don't know. We're going to see what happens with Daniel Briere, because honestly, I think this is his last coach. He really hasn't proven anything as far as being a GM, because honestly, the Michkov pick was a no-brainer where they got him in the draft. So where do you go from there? Right? You're supposed to go up, but that's not what's happening here just yet. Maybe we'll see what Briere does in the draft this season. Maybe we'll see what free agency signs, and maybe he could save his hide. But he really hasn't brought much to the table for the Flyers. And so I don't know how much more patience the Flyers faithful are going to have in Briere. I know they love him because he's a former Flyer himself, but at a certain point in time, even Paul Holmgren was pushed out the door. And unless you deliver, Daniel Briere I think is on borrowed time. But anyway, come Saturday, I think the Montreal Canadiens can extend their winning streak, get another couple of points, and maybe, just maybe, with a little bit of help, get a little bit more separation from the New York Rangers. Now, I know my buddy Paul Cuthbert down in New York is probably chomping at the bit to say, oh, those Habs, they're going to lose and we're going to take over. Yeah, that might be right. But at the end of the day, right now as it stands, Paulie, the Canadiens are 2 points up on your Rags. And I think we still have a game in hand, or we may be even. But at the end of the day, I think the Rangers play either tomorrow or Saturday. So Saturday's going to be a big one. I'm not cheering for the Rangers, Paul. I don't care what you tell me. I love you, man, but I don't love you that much. Enjoy Saturday night, guys. We'll see you after the game. Go Habs, go.